Hello everyone, how's it going? It's Ben. Welcome to another episode of the Bonny Rackham. Apologies, it's been a little bit of a wait for this one. I had a bit of a horrible cold last week or so yeah, it's been delayed a bit. Still not great, so apologies if I'm a bit snivelly. Yeah, without further ado, let's get into this one and let's get a title sorted.
First item.
So yeah, I feel like I'm not being too imaginative with these titles as of late. I feel the second half of this season, you know, the show's really doing well at kind of sticking to a theme each episode and applying it to like most of the characters or the plot. So it's just kind of making it really easy for me. So yeah, this one I've just called Judgment. You know, this theme, it plays a big part throughout. Flint, Billy, Miranda, Abigail, Eleanor, Vane, they all sort of touch on Judgment this episode. Obviously, I'll go into it more as usual as we come across it. But yeah, that's what we go with this one.
Next item.
Okay, so written by, another one where the writing credits are a little different. This is one where it says teleplay by Jonathan E. Steinberg and Robert Levine again. And story by Mark Berensky and Maria Melanick. And it's directed by Steve Boyum, a name we were introduced to at the beginning of this season. Okay, so we open with a flashback of Abigail being taken by Ned Lowe's crew. She can hear the commotion on deck. Her maid or a chaperone, whoever it's supposed to be, is comforting her. And yeah, we see she's dragged away and she was obviously killed, I think is pretty safe to say. Really creepy shot of Lowe kind of coming in. Yeah, Abigail wakes from her nightmare and it's Miranda that comforts her. And we hear Abigail narration over what's going on. Yeah, we see now she's on Flint's ship and she's being treated well. They're on their journey. She's writing a diary, though she's pretty confident it will be destroyed upon her return. She says she can believe the men around her as sailors, simply tasked on taking her home. But she says it's just an illusion. She has her father's ideas in her head about pirates, and we'll see her come, you know, find her own truths by the episode's end. She wonders if Flint is the monster her father says. That word again, monster, comes up a lot in this episode. She says he's leading this theatre, and she's made some very keen observations here. She even mentions the men dancing to his tune, you know, obviously an explanation from this show. I've mentioned before and always liked this idea of dancing the dance. She says she has a thought that most frightening. What happens if the man decides the theatre no longer serves his purpose and he lets the men loose? Yeah, that would be the season finale, Abigail. That would be the season finale. Just hang on another episode or so. At that point, Flint checks in on her. And yeah, a great first scene to get our real sort of first insight into Abigail. We get, you know, to see a truly innocent outsider and an intelligent one at that. So many smart observations already shared here alone from her. So yeah, we're still in the same, they're in the cabin and Flint walks over to join Miranda. Yeah, she's obviously coming along with him as she said she would. And, you know, Miranda says Abigail is a woman now, not the young girl she remembers, and refers to her as a clock finally struck its time, that's woken her from this dream or this nightmare she's been living. And yeah, damn, the foreshadowing already is just wild. And we'll get back to that clock again near the end. Miranda sadly ponders how unrecognisable she would be now to the woman she was then. I think she's more in there now than she thinks. Yeah, a really sort of sad couple of Miranda episodes now on rewatch. At this point, Flint tenderly takes her hand and says he recognises her. Maybe my favourite little moment of theirs, just so touching, so much shared love and loss for them both. He asks her if she recognises him anymore, and she says yes. And he jokes and smiles and says, well, that's in our favour then. Yeah, you know, all these two have been through. This again, so sad and tragic, knowing what's to come as well. Miranda breaks the lighter mood a bit by asking if Peter Ash will recognise them. And yeah, another episode off to a really strong start. Next we are at the brothel and a rather stressed looking Featherstone walks straight past poor Adele, who looks a little put out by this. I never really looked too deep into their little thing they've got going on in previous watches. I just took it as, you know, she has some benefits by being his sort of sweetheart. You know, I thought maybe she humoured him a little bit. But I'm sort of seeing here, yeah, there could be some feelings involved, you know. So yeah, I'm going to keep a little closer eye out on these two, on their little moments during this rewatch. So yeah, he goes straight into Max's office and she's in there already with Jack. And yeah, Jack's back. Yeah, he does not look happy. Obviously, a lot he would have had to have caught up on in regards to Anne. So yeah, Max is at her desk. They're both sort of sorting through some leads, I think, by the looks of it, very unenthusiastically. So Featherstone is stressing quite loudly about retrieving the gold. Max has clearly filled them both in on her plan. I love Jack's first line that he says is just sass. He says, there might be someone on the moon who can help you, because obviously he's talking really loud. Yeah, so they go over a little bit the logistics of keeping it secret, where they're going to put it, and how tough a mission it is for a bit and all that sort of stuff. And Max says they're capable of doing it and more, and sort of sends Featherstone on his way, seemingly a little calmer. But it's not looking like the most convincing scenario right now. Alone, her and Jack discuss Anne. Max can tell he's pissed off, but wants to know if he's angry at Anne or for her for giving Anne the opportunity. Obviously, a lot for Jack to process in terms of Anne. I don't think he's just got back. I think it's been a few days by the looks of it. And yeah, Jack says for so many years he thought he knew her, perhaps the only one. But after all they've been through the last few weeks and all she's done, he says she's a fucking mystery to me. He sort of says it with a sad sort of smile. He ponders if something has significantly changed within her or if he ever really knew her at all. I think he's sort of going to find his answer somewhere in the middle there. He says the most disturbing thing of all is because it's Anne, a woman of very little explanation, he will likely never know which it is. But you'll get some answers soon, mate. Might not be the complete answer you want, but it will clear things up somewhat at least. Yeah, some tough realities he's having to face on his return. Like I say, I think he's obviously learned about what went down. I think he's the only person Max would be able to truly trust with the whole truth, because obviously he wouldn't tell anyone. So yeah, maybe he's feeling a bit guilty here as well. But he says maybe with everything that lies ahead, it will be for the best she's not about. As Anne had her struggles last episode, you know, about their relationship, we're getting Jack's thoughts on their relationship in this scene. So yeah, sort of still in the brothel just outside in the courtyard area, Featherstone and Adele are having an unheard bit of bickering, and we see a new face. A lady watching on with some interest. We follow her through the market, and she asks to see the lady of the house. Who's she reporting to? It's Mrs. Mapleton. We've not seen her in a while. So yeah, this woman, she updates her on what she's seen from outside the door regarding Max, Jack and Featherstone. So we ask, who is Mrs. Mapleton reporting to? Is this for herself or for someone else? And mysteriously, we cut to Eleanor. In her office, having a meeting with one of the captains, I forget his name, but he's one of the consortium lot. She asks about the fort. She obviously wants to know what's going on with Vane. He tells her the doors have been shut a while, so they're either planning an attack on them, or choosing a new captain. About that. Yeah, let's not get too ahead of myself. So yeah, Mrs. Mapleton enters and gives her the news. It's Eleanor she's playing spy for. Mapleton says they've underestimated Max a bit, and that something's going down. She says she believes she knows what it is and that Eleanor will want to know. And yeah, back to that in a bit. Okay, so we're back to the warship and Walrus crew. Great shot of it on the seas. The special effects already, again, you know, looking so much more improved than first season. So we're on deck and John does his next item. Of course, this is a big thing now. All the men stomp along with him. He has their undivided attention. Complete turnaround from episode 2. So yeah, he's telling a story for a bit, though we don't know that first time round. We cut to Mr. Scott and Billy watching on. And Scott remarks on Silver's quick rise and influence. He says that John knows the power of a story, and that's how he's got to where he was. You know, Billy's a bit dumbfounded a little bit by all this. Scott says in terms of the crew, Silver may very much be Flint's equal, and Billy remarks that this isn't even Silver's story, and he says can't trust a fucking thing that comes out of his mouth. Yep, that's John Silver in a nutshell. So yeah, Mr. Scott says the story's his, it isn't his, but the power of the telling, that's clearly his. And yeah, big Silver mantle building episode, this one. Really homing in on his storytelling and his honesty. Scott continues, he says, for now he's using this talent to help the captain, but God help us if he ever realises what else he could use it to accomplish. Yeah. Silver's starting to be pushed to the front of our minds again, like last episode, you know, they're really pushing him now. This rise has snuck up on us as an audience, but we saw it very early on in this season, him laying the groundwork, and we know he's got a scheme ongoing. As Silver is going for this sort of big finish to this story, we see one of the two guys who reported on the Urca having a little giggle to himself. Straight away, an angry Silver takes them both aside, both the men that were involved. Their names confuse me a bit as to who was who. Well, one of them, giggling guy, is Nicholas, I know that for sure. But the other one, I didn't know if it was Ernie or Vincent. Both them names popped up, but I couldn't tell which one it was. So, yeah, Ernie Vincent, we're calling him. But yeah, giggling guy, Nicholas, he's not the smartest, not the most subtle. Silver issues caution and drops a lot of F-bombs on them both. First and not last time, we'll see he's behaving like a certain someone a little bit here in his anger and his kind of intimidation. It's definitely the most intimidating we've seen him so far. So yeah, maybe some of the Flint's commanding presence really starting to rub off on him. Nicholas plays it down a bit, says no one's asking questions, so leave me alone sort of thing, and he leaves. And Silver speaks to the smarter guy, Ernie/Vincent, and says he has the potential to be a real problem for the two of us. The guy just sort of gives him a nod, and yeah, we will see how he's interpreted that in a little bit. Back to Eleanor and Mrs. Mapleton. Mapleton, she knows Charlotte and Logan running away together is crap. She produces a saving box that Charlotte entrusted her. Why anyone would entrust this woman with anything is beyond me. Maybe a little bit of a convenient plot device, but we didn't really know Charlotte that well, so it's nothing major and it's possible they could have been close. So yeah, she's got some of it right in that they are deceased, but she suspects it's Max of foul play because she wanted to get the information, and she obviously hasn't accounted, Mrs. Mapleton, hasn't accounted for both Anne and Silver involved in all this, and, you know, and that it's two separate events that have sort of just ended up coming together. And add on top of that, she's heard the fake news about the Urca no longer being there, and she's put two and two together and got 5. But yeah, Eleanor, she's not too convinced. She's not sure how Max could manage all that. I mean, yeah, she'd be underestimating Max a little bit here. Again, it's not quite right, but Max has definitely knew what she was doing and made the best of all of it. Mapleton doesn't know, but informs her Jack's cargo ship was emptied on the island that very morning and has started loading on provisions ready to set sail. She says she believes Max knows the treasure's whereabouts and is planning on bringing it back. Of course, with all that she's gone through and the plans having changed, Eleanor knows bringing the treasure to the island is not the good news it would have been a short while ago. The captain will sort of come back and exposition all this a little bit as well in a bit, as Mrs. Mapleton just has. I don't know if we as an audience, you know, really needed them both to kind of go into it all again, but they do. Obviously, a dilemma for Eleanor, though, and I'm still trying to keep the love. I'm just doing my best. But she's going to try and mess with my guy Jack in the next episode, so yeah. But yeah, a bit more of all that dilemma soon. So yeah, the Walrus crew are all sort of quietly sat down to eat. Again, just everyone seems to be on their best behaviour with 2 women on board. All very, dare I say, civilised. Abigail sitting with Flint and Miranda, and Billy comes over. He has Abigail's attention, it's fair to say. Yeah, you know, good taste, Abigail. I love that Miranda sort of notices it, and I think Flint does a little bit. After Flint and Billy talk navigation a moment, Billy leaves, and Flint gives Abigail a bit of backstory on Billy, who, yeah, has been somewhat of a mystery to us, really. So yeah, nice, but a sort of another sad bit of background and insight. You know, Abigail remarks that he looks out of place here, reminds her of someone she might have known back in London. And yeah, really homing in on that these are mostly just normal guys with bad starts and backgrounds, so they've made the best of what they can. Men likely with, you know, very similar stories like Billy. Yeah, Flint informs her there could have been every chance he could have been someone she might have known were things different. His parents were levellers, they spoke out against impressment and kidnappings. From my understanding, levellers were sort of like a political party, I think. Yeah, I didn't research too heavy into it, to be honest. His parents at least handed out pamphlets, and they taught Billy to read and write so he could continue when he was old enough. He was found by a press gang, and he was separated from his parents, who were pretty much in prison for 3 years. And when the Walrus crew freed Billy, he got his revenge on his parents' capturer, but he never returned to them, afraid his father wouldn't accept a murderer for a son. And yeah, after Anne's last episode, another pretty sad backstory. It certainly gives Abigail some food for thought as well. a pirate, with a guilty conscience and shame, went ahead with this life rather than, try and return back to civilization, because he sort of saw civilization a little bit for what it was worth in this sort of moment. Okay, yeah, so giggly guy Nicholas has been ordered by the group to go to do the main mast. That's obviously his job. Obviously, in the main mast is way up top. So yeah, we cut to Miranda and Flint, who are sat talking. Such a different atmosphere with the women on board. Even Flint's on his best behaviour. He's pondering what's to come and thinking about the judgment he's going to get, and the man he's become. The duality with Flint and McGraw, they've really been homing in on these last few episodes, are really evident here. He knows everything hangs in the balance of that judgment. Yeah, Miranda asks if he can defend that man and says there are good arguments in defence of him. Flint says for some, maybe most, but there are some things that Captain Flint's done that can't be defended. He doesn't say I, he speaks in the third person here. As I said last episode or so, I love this reflective, honest sort of James Flint we're getting, and just these lovely, honest conversations him and Miranda are having. Finally, he's going into his concerns further of Ash making him for his worst deeds, one of which we'll learn about in a little bit. As he's talking, we see Nicholas setting to his task, but we see a fray in one of the support ropes. Flint concludes Ash is going to render judgment, and it all depends on what he sees, me or my name. So yeah, the stakes of what's to come are really being set up here. So Silver is sat on his own in contemplation, likely worrying about the Nicholas situation, and Ernie or Vincent enters. He's not exactly being quiet or subtle either, much to Silver's frustration. He apologises for his friend. We see they were at cross purposes for a little bit, for a while. And Silver says, well, if you can think of something to say, now would be a good time. And then the penny sort of drops from them both, and Silver, when he realises this guy thought he gave him the order to kill Nicholas. He rushes to try and stop the inevitable, but it's too late. Nicholas crashes to the deck, just in time for Silver to witness the whole thing. Okay, back with Jack, Featherstone and Max. They're all in her office again. They've clearly been talking tactics for a while. I just love how over it Max looks. She's just absolutely done. I don't think the maritime stuff is her speciality or interest. She's obviously been listening to Jack and Featherstone go backwards and forwards on plans for a while. How to get it, where to put it, when they get it. Stomping on each other's ideas and finding danger and fault when, really, she just wants them gone and to return with some money. Jack, who's been staring at the fort, sort of pipes up saying it's astonishing how much damage you women can do once you let them in the door. And I love how Featherstone looks to Max and sort of mouths, does he mean you? and she thinks he means Anne. But Jack corrects them both, and he's talking about Eleanor. And Jack calls out the Eleanor and Vane situation. The words obviously got round, but he knows more, than anyone in terms of Vane's weakness when it comes to Eleanor, as he'll elaborate on in a little bit. He observes that Vane's either in there trying to get his crew back on side and work out what to do next, or he's dead, and a new captain is trying to do the same thing. And Max sort of asks him to get to his point. Where does one store a fortune of coins, Jack says. In a goddamn fort. Featherstone sarcastically sort of says, so you're just going to go up there and ask whoever's running the show, can we use your fort to store our fortune? And Jack, a man with a plan now, simply says yes. Care to join? Max says to Featherstone, please go with him so he doesn't get himself killed. Oh yeah, a good little scene this. I really like this. I don't actually think Max has made me giggle before. She's not really a comedic character. But yeah, she's so over these two in this scene. She just wants them gone. She's like a mother. It's pretty amusing. But yeah, it's a good idea as any from Jack. And I wonder if curiosity on Vane's fate is also playing a small part in this interest as well. Yeah, but we'll see. It will pay off. Okay, so back to Eleanor, and she is deep in contemplation in her office. And the captain from earlier enters. And yeah, he's aware of the development with Mrs. Mapleton. We learn that a day has passed. And he remarks the Colonial Dawn, which is Jack's ship obviously, has been loading supplies and in a day will be ready to set sail. He goes over a little bit about what Mr. Guthrie said a couple of episodes ago and what Mrs. Mapleton has already sort of said. Current plan and the gold on Nassau, they just don't coincide anymore. They can't coexist. It will cause issues with the Spanish. and says, we need to get to it, basically. And Eleanor rightly says, there is no we, I have to deal with this. And what you're saying is, I need to have everyone who knows the whereabouts of this gold killed. Captain Rackham, his crew, and she pauses, at the name that's causing her the most distress, Max. Yeah, he says it's not as if you haven't done it before, but yeah, he's sort of clearly showing he's got no idea how different the emotional dilemma is on this one. There was no one. She was doing it for Max when she sort of did it last time. Well, not completely for Max, for herself as well, obviously, back in episode 6, but, Max was a big part of it. Yeah, Eleanor says, passionately, I have done what I've done to arrive at this point. I've done what I've done and I will live with it. But do not for a moment believe that defines me. I will not be that person. And the captain quietly leaves without further word. Some great parallels with her and Flint having very similar thoughts. Flint knowing he's going to have to explain away some of these most unforgivable deeds soon in judgment. But Eleanor being asked now to give the go-ahead to commit, a really terrible deed to ensure this plan of hers and Flint's has a future. Of course, something or someone will make that decision much easier for her in a little bit. It's somber below deck as poor Nicholas is being sewn into his final resting shroud bag. I'm not sure what you call it all. Silver takes Ernie/Vincent aside and asks him why. Some miscommunication. He thought Silver gave him the order to kill him. He says he gave him a look, and Silver ponders aloud. Flint gives you an order, I have to convince everyone it's in their interest. But I give you a look, and you're willing to murder a man, your friend, sort of, over it. He says, I listen to Vince because you tell me it's in my interest. I listen to you because I know you give a shit about my interest, and I'm not the only one that thinks that way. I think this is a bit of a shock and a revelation to Silver, and of course unlocks a lot of new potential. He's realised in this moment he's respected, maybe even more so than Flint. And we can see his brain ticking. A lot of potential with this new development, but also maybe confirming for him what Flint said, was it last episode? About where else will you matter and all that sort of stuff. So maybe a little bit of that as well for him. So yeah, out on deck and everyone's there, even Abigail and Miranda, and they do their sort of sea funeral for Nicholas. Yeah, Abigail narrates as voiceover again. And yeah, she's made some observations. All she's known is the story of monsters and the valiant men swore to slay them. But she fears the stories may have clouded the truth more than clarified it. Yeah, she says it would seem them monsters are men, sons, brothers, fathers. And it would seem these men feared their own monsters. And yeah, again, just really amping up this monsters versus civilization. A big part we're going to see in the next couple of episodes. And of course now going into season 3. Abigail seeing for herself firsthand it's not all as simple as what she's known up until now. People just aren't like that. The world isn't like that. And yeah, we learn through her narration Abigail has been keeping something from them. But from all she's seen, she feels now she owes it to Flint to fill him in. So the three of them are in Flint's cabin and she's giving them the tea on her father. He once saw more reason and leeway when it came to pirates, but the Maria Lane is brought up, casting an instant, reaction in Flint and Miranda. Remember way back, we heard some of this from Billy and, I forget his name. We saw a blooded Flint and knew he reported to Miranda about something, but we never got the full story. We learn it was Mr. Alfred Hamilton on board. And we say, do what you got to do, Flint. I'm guessing it's Alfred's wife he slays as well. And yeah, we'll see again next season. If you're married to a wrong'un, you get no mercy when Flint's blood is up. Absolutely. You're tagged with the same mark, unfortunately. And yeah, we see the rage in Flint's face on the flashback. It's only, with so much happened in the story and that's been going on, like I imagine most, forgot about this small sequence. Abigail says that her father referred to the act as completely incompatible with civilized society, that he would dedicate his life to eradicating it. So yeah, Flint feeling his bloodlust and needing his revenge all them years ago is why he now has a massive mountain to climb in order to convince this guy. She asks him, pretty much begs him that when he returns her to Charlestown to turn around and sail away. And that is a cue to a great shot of the ship approaching land. They have arrived. There are two sort of big patrol ships already in the bay, preventing them from getting any closer. And Flint tells Billy to make it clear to everyone, no weapons, no cannons, no threat of violence. Billy asks what if they start shooting at us, and Flint just says duck. He's really on his best behaviour right now. He takes Miranda aside and God, I both love and hate this little moment. I love she won't accept being left behind on the ship for one, She wants to see it through with him now. But obviously I hate what this leads to next episode. Ultimately, she won't stay behind because she blames herself. She learned Albert Hamilton was on that ship, the Maria Lane. She knew what it would do and the danger it would put them in and how it might affect him emotionally afterwards. But she told him anyway because deep down, a part of her really wanted justice as well. She says if he's going to face judgment behind them walls, then so should she. I can't believe what a great character we're about to lose, seemingly when she's just at her strongest, most realised self. Flint looks like he wants to discuss it a bit further, but a convoy comes to fetch them. They have received Vane's letters and demands, and Flint has to inform them he's not Vane, and he has no demands but a request. And we then see Flint, Abigail and Miranda sailing to shore with the convoy of Ash's men. And we are introduced to this trigger-happy fuckhat who, excuse my French, but boo you. And great set and exterior. We've been to other places, but they've done a great job of making Charlestown look like a whole, different world. There is still every possibility that it's the Nassau set, but I'm not sure. But it's looking peaceful and like a respected deal is going to be honoured. But Flint is blindsided and set upon by some of the men. It's made clear by Trigger Happy Guy that Lowell Vane's ransom was never going to work. They were never going to get out of this alive. Ash would never let them leave, it seems. And Abigail is sort of watching on his horror as Flint is being beaten and sort of Miranda's being held back. And finally, she plucks up the courage to come to his defence. She tells this guy that they're telling the truth and she vouches for Flint and says that she knows him and threatens to tell her father if they strike him again. Well done Abigail, saving our guy's life sort of right here in this moment. So we cut straight to Ash's house and straight to that bloody clock. And the subtle foreshadowing of this season has been so well done. So we are inside Ash's place and he and Abigail are reunited and we sort of see that happen a little bit off screen. And while the clock loudly ticks and Flint and Miranda exchange a glance, it's finally happening. Peter enters the room and some glances are exchanged. Of course, we know a lot will be going on through his head as well as theirs, but he forces a smile and he welcomes them. And we will pick up that meeting next episode. Back to Jack, who's with Featherstone and knocking at the fort door. More great set design. The fort is one of my favourites. And Jack's still sharing his thoughts on Eleanor's hold on Vane with Featherstone. He notes how after all Vane's been through, she seemingly's got the best of him right now. Funny moment when he says he once heard Vane refer to Eleanor as Lady Honeypot. Not anymore, I don't think. Beware the women, Mr. Featherstone, they bite, he continues. Featherstone says he's in love with a good woman, to which, of course, Jack knows a bit more about, how Adele was taught to keep him on side, sort of furthering the point to him, at least, that he just made in his mind. Jack wonders why it's so quiet inside and then spots the crows circling above. And Featherstone notes Vane's ship is still on the bay, which, with all honesty, I've lost track of what ship he has at the moment. It's not the Ranger, but they got there somehow. But Jack knows something's not right, so with some help, I'm guessing from their crew, they break in and we see a very deserted looking fort apart from a body hanging. They don't show us straight away and we're left to worry, is it Vane? But then we cut again to Eleanor's. Esme is the one that brings her the news. Of course, still very possible it could be Vane at this point for first time viewers. But no, we see that it's her father, Mr. Guthrie.
Oh, she passed away? All right.
With a note pinned to him. Ah, Charles Vane, you sneaky devil. It's a great voiceover and end to the scene and episode, and yeah, I won't read it all. Sort of quick paraphrase, summary, fuck about and find out is basically what he's saying. No, Vane remakes the point, he will be no man's slave again. Says as long as he draws breath, Nassau should remain free, and that Richard Guthrie was plotting something to see her returned to the rule of the king, to betray Nassau, and I thought so. It's not clear exactly what on all that. I think it's touched on again in season 3, episode 9, so we can go back to all that then. He says he was warned that she would betray him by his men, and he'd hoped that they'd shared enough, but he knows her too well, so he prepared in case they were right. So him pleading with her last episode, was not just for his own sake and love for her, but really trying to give her a chance, I think, to prove his suspicions wrong and give her a second chance. And yeah, he knows the warship is vulnerable right now, and he's intended to make the most of it. The music sort of starts to pop and rise, and we see the warship just as Flint has left it, and in the reeds we see a badass shot of Vane and his men watching and waiting. He says once he claims her, he'll be returning to Nassau to settle the rest of his accounts. And yeah, the episode ends on Vane's determined face. And yeah, you cannot rule anyone out on this show. So yeah, let's get into the afterthoughts and the MVP and all the rest of it.
Last item.
So yeah, a pattern I'm noticing with this show this time around is we get 2 or 3 higher octane or very busy episodes, usually with one writer, where the plot's moving a little bit faster and there's a little bit more going on. And then once or twice a season we get these sort of holding episodes, I guess you could call them. Episode 4 from this season had a similar vibe. The writer's title card's confusion kind of makes me think that any odds and ends that they have left over before they sort of go into a next big phase, they sort of come together to make sure that maybe things haven't been missed on their busier episodes, just gone, that they give a bit more time for, get a bit more character background in, bit of exposition. I'm not saying it's a bad episode. I noticed it more in episode 4. I wouldn't notice the difference in this one if I wasn't paying such attention to it all a bit more. But this and episode 4 almost feel like sort of prologues to the next chapters. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, just sort of an observation I've made and curious to see if I notice it moving on. So yeah, as I said with the title, judgment playing a big part, Abigail realising her judgments on both Pirates and Flint's aren't as simple as she once believed, and Flint worrying about the judgment he will face for his past deeds and how that will hinder his task, and Miranda admitting she deserves to be judged for her part she played. Eleanor once more caught between a rock and a hard place, having to make a tough judgment of her own, but she soon learns, due to her betrayal, Vane has played judge, jury and executioner. And even Jack making a judgment call that will pay off. A really great Abigail episode and some great Flint stuff. I think I'm going to stick with an 8.7 with this one. We do go over some things a little bit, but there's enough great stuff in there to keep this nice and high scoring. MVP. Okay, so once more we're back to no obvious sort of shout outs. Jack finally decides, rather than standing talking about it any longer, to go and see what's going on in the fort. And he comes up with the idea of using it to store the gold on their return. A plan we know that comes to pass. So yeah, big brains from him. Miranda, as I've said, stepping up to take responsibility in the part she played on Flint's revenge on Mr. Hamilton. Both quite small little moments though. I think the stronger shout out is between Vane and Abigail, and I'm trying to decide if I can justify giving Vane the lead, for one scene when he's already going to be such a big contender for episodes 9 and 10. It's a well thought out plan though, and just a badass moment seeing him in the reeds. Or does Abigail deserve it? Never easy to admit to yourself, judgments you made about a group of people or someone in the past are wrong. She didn't have to say anything to Flint or give him any warning about what was happening, what was going to happen in Charlestown. She could have just got herself safely home and put it all from her mind, but she does the right thing and warns them, and then she bravely speaks up when Flint is being beaten and uses her authority to grant them an audience with her father. Yeah, one of those where I think I've answered my own dilemma here, haven't I? And yeah, Abigail Ashe is going to get on the score sheet. Another character I think, when all is said and done, will deserve her little one MVP award on the board. Okay, so favourite scene and quote. I love the second little Jack, Max and Featherstone scene that I spoke about, where just Max is over it all. I do like that. But I think it's got to go to that final scene and Vane's revenge and his plan to take the ship, to really get us hyped for these final couple of episodes of the season. Quotes. Again, some nice reflective observations from some of our characters. Nothing I'd put on a t-shirt necessarily, though. I quite like Eleanor's. I have done what I've done to arrive at this point. I will live with it, but do not for a moment believe that defines me. I will not be that person. And that contrasts nicely with what Flint's been saying, and something quite tragic about it, considering where she will end up by the season's end. A couple of funny little Jack quips, but yeah, nothing massively standing out for me in regards of quotes. So yes, that is episode 8 done, and again, apologies, I am a bit bunged up and a bit but I wanted to get it done while I'm feeling a little bit brighter in case I dip down again, and now I can get episode 9 watched and written up at least. I'm ready to record again. But yeah, thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you soon on the flip side. Peace out. Bye.